I would also be happy if I discovered a giant pie that I could sit on. Today I've got a mini album tutorial for you, and we are making this little album from start to finish. I am showing you all the tiny things. I've got mini envelopes, mini pockets, a mini shaker page, and so much more. Plus we've got the peek of the week. Here we go, y'all. Well, hello and welcome to Pink Paper Peppermints. My name is Melissa and I'm so glad you're here. Today we are talking about all things mini, and we are going to make this teeny tiny mini junk journal from this giant tag. And what we're going to do is just score it in 4 places to create a spine. And yes, I am using a butter knife to score it with because, you know, the drill, I could not find my scoring tool. So I've scored it in 4 places here, and I'm going to create the spine about 1/4 of an inch. And I am my future self know that this is going to be way too small. At the time I was making this, though, I was like, no, I'm going to make a little small journal, and I should have known better than that. It is way too small, so you'll see later how I adjust that. But here it is, all complete. You're just scoring it to create that spine on both sides. Now the pages are just made from scraps, and they are about 2.5 inches by about 3 inches, and this is going to depend on if you use the tag to make your book or if you decide to just cut some paper, because you can do this same thing with just any piece of cardstock and just cut it to the shape of the tag. And so here I'm just measuring to make sure my page fits into my cover, and then I'm going to use that page as a template for the rest of the pages. So I wanted to show you some fun mini page ideas. This is a little window page. I've used some of my printable washi there on the front, and I'm using a piece of vintage folder, which I'm going to show you later in our peek of the week, to create this window page. Now, I got this idea from one of my creative team members and good friend Lauri, and I will link her demo below, and she told me about these pumpkin dies that I just love. I've been playing with them a lot. So I wanted to make a shaker, but I also wanted it to be able to be open. So you can see I've added some little mini bits here, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. But what I did was I created the shaker on the back page. So now this will have to be the center page for this to work, but basically I just sewed a piece of plastic on that back page to create the shaker. And then I also typed on the window in the pumpkin with my orange typewriter ink, which I will link that below for you as well if you haven't seen that yet. And then this next page I created with the printable washi. Instead of printing it on sticker paper to make washi, I just printed it on regular paper to make it a page. Now this is a scrap of paper that I had done some chicken scratch on, and I will link you to that video if you haven't seen the chicken scratch video below. And I want to use it because most of the paper is still good, but just that little bit in the middle. So I'm going to cover that up with a piece of gingham fabric, and I'm just going to sew that on. And I thought the washi, it would be really cool to sew along those strips of washi to make it kind of like look quilted. And so that's what I did here. And I'm experimented with putting something in that paper to create like a paper quilt. And I'm going to talk about that in a different video because it didn't quite work like I thought it would. So I have to work with that a little more. Now, this is a border idea that I got from Michelle. You saw her on the screen there. She's on my creative team as well. And she's got a demo where she shows all these really cool border ideas. And so this was one of them, was to cut the hexagons out of the paper, which I just loved, and I just made a little tuck spot with those, and I'm tucking in some of the mini flash tabs in there. Now these are designed to be like little mini flashcards that you use as tabs on the side of your book, but they're perfect for mini books. They look like little mini flashcards. This is a little page insert that I created from a full-size piece of pattern paper from the collection, and what I did was I just shrank it down. So I told my printer to print it at 40%. And when you do that, you get little teeny tiny pages. And here is an example of the giant journaling tag. I printed it at 40%, and you get a teeny tiny little tag, which I just love. Here I've used some of my ephemera, and I shrank it only by about 75% so that I didn't want it to be too small because it's already fairly small. But you can see if you look at the little bunny there, how much smaller he is. And my friend Ingrid, who's also in my creative team, she is the master at using tiny bits, and she just did a great demo with those. So I will link her demo below as well. So for this page, I wanted to use this pie, but it was a little bit big for the page. So I'm just going to line it up on the side there and trim off the edge, and that's actually a good way to create a base on your page and also to make it so your piece doesn't feel like it's floating on the page. So I'm adding this little squirrel sitting on top of the pie and some word art, and I love that because it looks like he's just so happy that he's discovered this giant pie, which I would also be happy if I discovered a giant pie that I could sit on. So now I'm going to show you some journaling card tricks for minis. So these are the journal cards, and one thing that you can do to fit them into a mini is just to trim them. Here I've just trimmed off about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and so it's basically the size of the whole page. And I'm just going to sew across the top here and make it like a little flap that you can lift up, and I'm going to put some things in there that I will show you a little bit later on. Another thing that you can do with the journal cards is, again, shrink them down. So I've printed it here at about 55%, and you can see the size of them, how little they are. And one of the things that I thought would be fun to do is, instead of cutting them apart, is take two like this and fold them in half and create a micro mini journal album. And I'm using scraps to create the pages. So I've just created a few little pages with scraps, and I will show you in another video what I'm going to do with this tiny little book. And the way I'm binding it is just to sew some, or rather tie some twine around the edges. Then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to shrink down my labels and tags and pockets for my tiny little journal. And I've done these at about 55%. And you can see the size difference there. And I ran this one through the typewriter and put a verse on it. And it works just the same. It's just teeny tiny. And I'm going to put that in the front of my book. And I've got something that I'm going to put in that in a little bit later. And this one I've put on a page here, and I'm tucking my little mini tiny micro book in it. Another thing that you can do with journal cards in a mini book is to fold them in half and wrap them around the pages and create kind of a little mini page wrap. Here I'm using this little chicken ephemera and attaching it to the card and backing it with some pattern paper. So I've got kind of a shaped page wrap that's going to wrap around the insert pages of my teeny tiny little junk journal. So these are the giant journaling tags, and I've made this one even smaller. It's at 40%, and instead of cutting the tags apart, I've again folded them in half to create a little micro mini tag book. And so I've got some pattern paper on the back there, and I discovered that the synonym cards, which you can see here, these line up with the flash cards and the flash tabs. They're the synonyms of all the words. These make the perfect pages when you shrink them down. So these are at 50%, and I've just sewn them together and accordion folded them. And then I'm going to tuck these inside my little mini micro mini tag book here, and they came out super cute. I just glued the back one instead of binding it because it's accordion fold. I just glued that back card to the back of the tag. So now I can just tuck my little mini book right inside my mini pocket in the front of my book. So this is one of my favorite ones. I took the string tie envelopes and I shrunk it by 55%, and you can see how tiny and cute it makes, kind of like a little coin envelope size with teeny tiny little tags, which I just love, or little labels I should say. And there is my tiny little envelope, and I didn't put the string tie closure on the back because it's just too tiny to fiddle with those little tiny circles. So I'm just going to use it like this. And the synonym cards, I trimmed them up just a little bit and they fit perfectly inside the envelope, which I thought that was really neat, and I love the way that that looked. And so there is my teeny tiny little envelope. So cute. So if you saw my live on Monday, you saw that I did some envelope and pocket ideas, and I wanted to show you one of those ideas shrunken down mini size. So you can do this with any size paper. They just have to have, you need 3 pieces, and they need to all be the same size and double-sided. So these are 3 double-sided scraps that I have. You're going to line them up about 1/4 of an inch apart when they're tiny like this, and then fold it over. And then you get this amazing little layered booklet page, and I'm going to turn it into a pocket for you here in just a minute, but you can use it just like this. You can put it into your journal, and then you can use it as a page. Now this is the one that I made in my live demo on Monday, and you can see here I sewed up the sides to create the pocket, and that's what we're going to do for the mini. And then I filled it full of all my tiny little mini things, and this one is already small, but we're going to make this next one even smaller. And oh, I also put this little mini file folder inside one of the pockets as well for some of my journaling. Okay, so now I've sewn up the sides of my tiny little mini one, and you can see how cute and small it is. And now I'm taking my little shrunken ephemera that's teeny tiny and putting it in these pockets. Little tiny tags and little tiny mushrooms. It's just so cute. And so this can now be a pull-out in your book, or you could send this to someone as a little gift. I think it would be so sweet. You could clip a hole in the top and make this a tag. This is another thing that I made, and I'm still experimenting with this, so I don't have a how-to on it just yet because the way I did it didn't work very well, but I used the fabric demo that Lisa did, so I will link you to her demo below if you haven't seen that yet. I wanted to show you also how to put together the mini mug book, because some of you have asked me about how to bind it, and I don't really bind it on this one. This one comes with these long pages which you fold in half and sew or staple down the middle to create the pages, but because the mug has the little holes in the handle, the way that I put it together is a little bit different. So you can see that I've sewn this one up. If you have a stapler that's long enough, you could just staple right in the center because the pages are so tiny. And what I did was just glue the back page to the back mug cover to create my little book. And you can see that here. It makes it super simple. Now you could also sew around the edge if you wanted to, but the glue works really well because the pages are so tiny and light. Now, one of the really cool things, these are those flash tabs again, and I rounded the corners and they actually fit perfectly in the mini mug book. So I've started creating this little book, and what I've done is sewn them down the sides of these pages where they open up in the center. And what I want to do is decorate the pages underneath. I have an idea of what I want to do, and I am going to work on that and show that to you later as well. So I guess we've got a whole second video with a lot of these ideas that I'm still kind of working on. So here are my inserts, and they're ready to go in, and they are so much bigger than I thought they were going to be, which is kind of silly. I should have known they were going to be gigantic because that's what always happens. But instead of doing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which is how I was going to bind this, I found this stretchy ribbon, and I'm going to just do kind of a tied binding because the book is small. This will work on any mini book, really. It's actually really easy to do in a really quick way. If you're like me and binding at the end is not your favorite part, this is a really quick way to bind up your little book, and it makes it so that you can still take out the pages later and work on them, maybe put them in the sewing machine or type on them if you're not quite finished with your book. So all I'm going to do here is take my ribbon and wrap it around the cover and the inside pages and tie a double knot in it, and my book is bound, and it's that simple. You could also use a rubber band if it's a stretchy enough one. That has worked for me as well. So let's do a quick flip through of the book and show you some of the pages that I did not on camera that are already complete, and you can see how chunky it is. It's kind of crazy. And there's my little mini tag book at the front. And I did the cover. I added some eyelet lace and just some ephemera on these pages as well. Some ephemera and some word art. There is our little chicken page wrap page. And this, I did a shaker page with a Simple Stories page protector, and I will link you to a video that I have that shows you how to do that. But it's super simple, adding in ephemera and confetti and everything. Then on this page, this is the one that I made with the pumpkin, and we did the little flip up page there. And when you flip it up, I have a little mushroom, and I made a flashcard pocket, and that's not a shrunken flashcard. That's the way the size of the regular flashcards, and just made a little tag pocket there. And there's our happy squirrel on the giant pie. This is a little fold out I did. These are tabs from the labels and tabs, and instead of cutting them apart, I just accordion folded them so that they would be a fold out. There's our little lace page, mini page, and our tabs tucked in our tuck spot. And there is our little mini book inside the tiny pocket. And next we have our window page. That's kind of a window page and a shaker page. And remember, that needed to be in that center so that we could see the shaker through the window. Here I just attached a silk leaf. And here I've got a little mini piece of ephemera, the flower sack, with a little envelope that I also made in that live demo on Monday. So if you want to see how I made that, you can check out that video and it will be linked below. And then we just have our little quilty page, which I added some pom-pom trim, and there's our adorable little mini pocket page and our envelope, and the rest of that shaker, Simple Stories shaker page. And then I just have some ribbon and key and word art kind of hanging down on the next page. And on the last page, I have a fun little technique that I learned from Paula and her demo, which I will link her demo below as well. She had lots of fun ideas for the nesting dolls, and she showed us how to do this little pull-out, which I thought was so cute. And so I cut apart the journal card with the nesting dolls, and I made her into a little pull-out on that last page. Well, now it's time for Peek of the Week, and that is where I share with you some of my favorite vintage finds. And so this first one is looks like the lady was studying art, and these are hand typed notes on an art class, and some vintage art I don't know what these are called, folder pages, and they've got this really crinkly plastic on them, which is what I used for that window page with the pumpkin die cut. And I just love having, when I find someone who was an artist and I find their old sketches and everything, I just love those so much. And I have a really fun idea to use these for as well, and I cannot wait to share that with you. You can see some more of her pretty little sketches here, and I really like this one. I like all the shading of it. And I just think it's so special to be able to preserve this artist's work and somehow incorporate it into my own work. And I kind of hope someone does that with mine someday. Well, I wonder if you can guess what this is. I was so excited when I found this at an estate sale. It is actually a player piano roll of music, and it is really, really amazing. It's from 1917, that's the date on it, and it's got all these little details, just labels and stamps, and it has directions on how to change the tempo of the song, and the coolest part is just the little holes and how they play the song. I just find that so fascinating and amazing. I would love to have an old player piano. Wouldn't that be so cool? When I was a little girl, we actually had one in my house. It didn't play anymore, but we had one, and it was just a regular piano by the time we got it. But I would love to have an old player piano. I don't know, do you think there's any of those left that actually still play? That would be so cool. Well, if you enjoyed this video, then I think you will really like this mini matchbook junk journal tutorial. I show you how to put together a mini matchbook and give you lots and lots of ideas for the pages. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have a week filled with peace and grace, and I will see you next time here on Pink Paper Peppermints.